What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Heat. I'm Enzo.l, your New York real estate agent. This is Patrick Rooney, my residential expert in real estate sales over at Oxford Property Group. Tonight's topic is dual agency. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? There's been so many things happening. It is now illegal in 8 states, but 4 states out of that 8 have done designated agencies. We'll get into that a little bit later. We'll also talk about something that happened at Houlihan Lawrence in 2017. And I want you to understand what's going on so you can figure out if this is something as a client or as an agent that you want to deal with. Now, what is a single agency and what is a dual agency?
So dual agency is when one broker represents both sides of a transaction. The one broker is going to be representing the seller and also the buyer. And obviously there could be some discrepancies here. And single agency is when each party's represented separately. Like a lot of people think about it when they're getting divorced, they might not use the same attorney as their spouse is going to do. Same thing with the real estate transaction. You really got to use, or most people will end up using, a different real estate broker, obviously a different attorney.
So what is the leverage of? So what is it that? What are the fiduciary duties, of an agent to a buyer and a seller? And like you just said, that was a good point. The divorcee, agents going between them, they may not want to share that. Explain why it's so important to have a specific person representing you.
Of course. So say I was representing the seller and I was representing the buyer. My job is to sell that property for the highest price possible. My job is to get the seller the most money possible for that property. Whereas Enzo's job is to get his buyer the very lowest price possible. So we both have totally opposite interests. If I was to represent both the buyer and the seller, now my job gets a little bit different. Like my fiduciary duties to the seller, I want to get to the highest price possible, but I also want the transaction to go through. And for that transaction
to go through.
But
what switches it up now? Where is that information in there? So you're saying that the difference is the fact that I know my client's financial record, you know your client's financial record. That is the biggest fiduciary duty, correct? Because the leverage of when they're going to push that buy-sell button immediately on that point.
Correct.
Okay.
So representing both sides in a way in the financial world is kind of like having inside information on the transaction. You know what the buyer can afford, you know what the seller's looking for, and you got to do your best to represent both parties equally.
Now, I'll tell you, the big problem we have now is you'll find out here in Manhattan, sometimes if you're looking at a studio apartment between $2,000 and $3,000, a lot of times they'll do something where the listing agent obviously represents the property owner, and they'll say, I'll pay you, I'll do an OP, an owner pays. So the owner will pay the agent for bringing in somebody. And what ends up happening is, clients out there find these properties and they find an agent to represent them, like myself or whatever. I'll call in and the other agent, listing agent, goes, I'm not co-broking with you. I don't want to co-broke. I don't want to split my commission at all. You collect your own. And that's not fair because the property was advertised as a no fee. Now the client's like, dude, whose side are you on? So in a sense, it also seems that there's 2 ways that a dual agency is created. Either by the property owner who says, I want to have it off market, or by the agent themselves that actually does not want to split a co-broke, does not want to co-broke. So whose fault is it more? Is it more of an agent creating the dual agency, or is it a property owner? Like, who lies the fault on this? Who can I blame? I want to blame somebody.
Yeah, everybody always likes to point fingers, and it's difficult in this situation because obviously the seller or the property owner might want to save out on fees if they don't have to pay 2 brokers. Obviously, they might save half the cost.
Sure.
But a little bit is on the broker too. You really, as a listing agent, I really think that you'd be doing the seller a disservice, not co-broking with somebody, because if you, say I had a
be an asshole.
Yeah, say Enzo had a listing and I had a buyer for it and he refused to co-broke, he refused to show it to me. What would his seller say if they found out that I had a ready, willing, and able buyer ready for renter ready for his property that he refused to show? I'd be very upset if I was in the place.
You're taking money out of the seller's pocket, out of the owner's seller pocket. You're taking a home away from my client. You're being a jackass.
It's just a disservice to the industry.
Problem. When that happens, guys, just snapshot that and put a note in your phone book of which broker did not want to co-broke with you. Just trust me, it will help you in the long run, because that little hiccups can cost you a lot of deals on that point over there.
It'd be good for the industry too.
Yeah.
So share that information.
Of course. So there's 8, and that's true. You should maybe go on WhatsApp and create a group and just say, hey, this broker. I don't know. But anyway, can we legally do that? I don't know. So there's 8 states out there right now that have outlawed dual agency: Florida, Alaska. Who's moving to Alaska? Colorado, Kansas, Texas, Maryland, Vermont, and Oklahoma. And out of that, 4 have designated agencies, which are Alaska, Colorado, Maryland, and Texas. Difference between dual agency and designated agency. Now, the difference that I found in that is that in a dual agency, it's one agent representing buyer and seller. In a designated agency, it could be two agents working in there, but that one agency is representing the buyer and the seller. Is it safer to have a designated agency? Like if you're in, okay, let me give you this real quick second. If you are going into an area where, oh my God, this is gonna be a dual agency, is it good to tell the client, you know what? Why don't you just come in here and I'll get another agent in my office to represent you?
I see what you mean. I've seen that happen in New York before, because sometimes I've seen a lot of, sometimes listing agents won't be comfortable working as a dual agent. Maybe they've had issues in the past, whether it's legal or not legal. So they might bring in another agent in there for them to do that. And I do think that's a much more better representation for both the buyer and the seller that way, since it still is two separate parties, even if they're at the same firm. I think each party's still much more well represented, whereas just myself or just Enzo representing both sides.
So find out in your state, your brokerage, if you're allowed to do dual agency, designated agency. Just see what you're under the house for. Because the crazy thing is, somebody died last year from a dual agency. Did you know that?
No.
I was fucking with you. So in 2017, up in Houlihan, Lawrence, there was a lawsuit. There was a woman looking for, I think it was a colonial house. You can find this in the news articles. It was about $599,000 or $600,000. So she wanted to go contact the lister. She contacted the lister to see it. Another agent called to represent her, but she did not know that that agent was under the same house of the firm. So what happens is that agent went with her to go see the listing agent's listing. And he basically said, hey, listen, you may want to put a bid in now. And he kind of urged her to get the bidding in there. So she immediately bought the place, everything like that. She later on found out that both agents worked for the same firm, and she felt betrayed. She felt it was a predatory practice. She felt that they didn't have her best interest. They claim that they disclosed that this was a dual agency. That turned into a lawsuit, and that was supposed to spiral into more and more commissions being paid back. I don't know what happened with it, but those situations can really hurt your reputation as an agent and as a brokerage, and they really do a disservice to the client that feels bamboozled. So the question I have for you, Pat, is what can you do as a client to protect yourself, to get all the information so you are sure that this is a dual agency, and what can you do as a firm to make sure that you cover your ass?
A lot of it, I mean, this designated agency, I think that would be a smart idea. If there is an agent at your firm that is representing both sides, it would be good to bring in I think it'd be a good idea to bring in another agent.
And you document this all in paperwork?
Yeah, it'd have to be documented. Like there's always, like whenever a transaction goes on, there's the DOS form that's filled out that'll state who's representing who's. Say like I'm representing, XYZ, the other agent's representing ABC. And I think that would be a better way of handling this.
Okay.
A better way of covering it to make sure each side's well represented.
Now I have a solution for a dual agency, and you tell me if I'm wrong, tell me what you think. I feel like you kind of can't be partial to one side or the other side anymore with the financial information. I feel like you should probably treat this like a lawyer would treat it, or you treat it like a best friend between two best friends, where you get both parties to talk in person or on the phone at the same time. You say, listen guys, this is gonna be a dual agency. I'm gonna lower my commission so there's trust, and we're gonna try to find the best market value between each other, but we're gonna talk at the same time so there's no back and forth. So you go from being an agent to being a mediator. Would you say that's the best way to do it, or no?
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, if I was doing a conference call or even in person, I had my seller and my buyer and also the other side of the party, it'd be tough. I mean, it's tough to on the spot while you're on the phone come to an agreement on a price right then. I mean, a lot of times for some of these properties lately, it could take weeks, if not a month plus, just to agree on a price. And for that to be crammed into one, 10 to 15 minute phone calls is got to be almost impossible. I mean, it takes people some time to come, whether they want to, if they want to submit a counter offer, like where it's going to be at. Like, I mean, there's a lot to take into consideration. So, I mean, it'd be good to have, the broker in dual agency speaking with both parties physically at the same time. Although it's tough, and it's a lot to ask for.
It's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, it's a lot to.
But it could streamline it.
Maybe. It could streamline it for sure if everybody kind of. I mean,
you kind of cover your ass at the same time.
Yeah,
outside the paperwork.
I mean, what an agent could do is speak with the seller directly, speak with the buyer directly, get a feel for where they each are, and like if somebody wants to start 10% below where the market's at, let them know that that's fine to start at, but the seller's really looking for 5% below, and then maybe don't go to the seller and tell them that. Just see where realistically the seller wants to sell, and then get them on the phone together so they each kind of have a heads up on where the other party's looking to finish at.
Well said, my friend. So there you guys go tonight, dual agency, and thank you so much for tuning into Real Estate Journey.